I believe that God has called everyone. Every Christian is called by God. Every Christian has a purpose. Most Christians work in the marketplace. They work in government, they work in industry somewhere, they work in education, they work in media, they work somewhere other than the religion domain, other than churches and the missionary agencies. So, as God calls us to those places, He calls us for His purposes. And His purposes are extremely broad. And it is time that we got engaged. We, all of the Christian body of Christ, okay? It is time that we got engaged. It's time we understood how valuable our work is. That God actually cares about the work we do. He cares about the bridges that we build. He cares about the systems we put together. He cares about the medicines we put together. He cares about the education we give to our kids. So it is time for us to understand how valuable our work is to God, how valuable we are to God when we're doing our work, and that we can glorify and honor Him right in our work. It is not only when we give money. It is not only when we come over and proclaim the gospel. It is while we are working and as we are worshiping God in our work, as we are engaged with the neighbors that God has put around us. I mean, consider how hard it is to bring 8 people together for a discipleship group. How you round them up, how you talk them into it, how you convince them to do 6 weeks with you. Come on a Wednesday night, it'll be wonderful, it'll be marvelous. Well, when I walk into my company, you know, and there's 50 people or 100 people or 200 people or 1,000 people who already want to follow me, don't you suppose I should call them disciples? You know, when Jesus first called those people, they didn't know He was God. Right? So just because people don't know Jesus doesn't mean they're not my disciples. So there's an amazing discipleship potential in the marketplace, already made, designed by God, ready to go. And if we don't see that, we're not seeing what God is doing. And one of my other favorite topics coming out of the business world is that business people are often made to feel like second-class citizens because the higher calling is, in fact, pastors and missionaries. Well, as a missionary now, I have come to understand it's not really a higher calling. All callings are callings from God. When we look at who is in the body of Christ, we really have elevated the pastors and ministers and all the people who have understood all this, and yet only 3% of the followers of Jesus are in what we call the religion domain. The other 97% are working someplace else. You know, they're working in government and media and education. And if we're going to see the fulfillment of the Great Commission, it's through the marketplace. I mean, it is the next frontier. But what we started to do was put task forces together, just like you would with any committee or organization, right? So we had a task force for one country and another country, and let me not mention the names. And as we got back together over the next months and year, I got very discouraged. Here I was, the one pulling Table 71 together, and I was looking to see what God was doing amongst us. And I have to tell you, I didn't see very much. Now, I got encouraged by some of the members saying, oh, God works slowly, God's doing all this and it'll work. But I just wasn't sure. God's really in charge. God is the one that decides what the project is. God is the one that selects the person to run the project. And God is the one that gives the instructions on how to do the project. And God is the one that brings the blessing. So what do? Our job is to get in relationship ahead of the project. Because once the project starts, you have to turn to your existing partners. You have to turn to people with whom you already have a relation. Well, God had for 2 years now been working on our personal relationships around the table. So here you had men and some women around the table, engaged together, speaking into one another's lives, talking about what God had been doing in their own ministry areas, building up something that God would then use to go spawn some of these things that have now come to pass. So as I have begun to look at partnering and what does partnering look like, I've come to understand the extremely high value on relationships. And it's not different than what we've seen elsewhere. I just didn't count on it quite so much. I wouldn't have spent my time forming relationships to the depth that I now form them, because I know that God will use them later. And I'm content forming a relationship and actually parking it, saying, okay, I don't know what God's doing, but when God brings your name back up again, I now have a relationship. So it's been fascinating to see how God has used all of that in Table 71.
Business people in the realm of business is being seen as maybe the strong arm of the Lord during this season of the church. It's something that we need to raise up and embrace our calling. We need to raise up and embrace till we hear the voice of the Lord saying. We need to go into the communities and serve the communities so we can disciple the nations. Through business, we have the opportunity to disciple nations. Through business, we have the opportunity to really disciple families, to change the future of a nation with opportunity and prosperity.
What has really impressed me is the number of businessmen that I've met at this conference. And they are starting to understand that they have the know-how and the knowledge and the experience to accelerate Christianity like no other organization, better than the churches, quicker than other missionaries. They apply business principles and they get it.